Hi everyone, no, that is not rain playing anywhere. That's actual rain outside, and it's been going on for days. And I'm going to do this intro anyway. The lovely and amazing Dr. Carolyn Coker Ross is my guest today. She's a new podcaster on the network, and we're going to talk about eating disorders. I'll tell you a little bit about her. She completed her undergraduate degree in modern foreign languages at Purdue University, and then was a full-time mother of two older sons before going back to school to complete her pre-med requirements. She then went on to the University of Michigan Medical School. Her practice experience after medical school helped fuel her interest in understanding what makes people heal. This is why she understands eating disorders so well. Boy, do we get into it. I'm really looking forward to listening to this show.
I wanna try and take in all the highs, embrace them for more than a moment's time. I want you, please don't move when I push you away. I know I contradict myself some days, but will you ride the lows with me?
Welcome to Mental Health News Radio. I am your host, Kristin Sunanta Walker. Our goal is to help discussions about mental health be a regular part of your daily life, no different than discussions about physical health. Mental illness can be a topic of discussion under the umbrella of mental health, along with so many other topics. This show is the original program on mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com. Our network of shows are played in over 180 countries and cover more topics under that umbrella than you can possibly imagine. We were talking about mental health long before it became cool and popular to talk about, and thank goodness it has become so popular. We have incredible guests, advocates, patients, experts, people. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy our intro music, a song named Lows, written by Aubrey Toon. You can find her music at www.aubreytoone.com.
That night when I started praying, I cried. Will you ride the lows with me? Will you ride the lows with me? When I'm down, my vision gets blurry.
Dr. Carolyn Coker Ross, thank you so much for coming on Mental Health News Radio.
Thank you, Kristin. It's such a pleasure to be with you today.
Yeah, and if our listeners remember, we did a show with you back in 2018.
Wow.
Which I know, which with everything that's gone on in 2020, that seems like 100 years ago.
Doesn't it? That's exactly what I was thinking. It's only 2 years, but it seems like, oh my goodness, we've gone through so much since then.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was Aaron Huey that put us back together beyond risk and back. So I'm so glad that he did.
Yeah. I've been on his show a couple of times in my role as a speaker at the C4 conferences. So, and he's fun to talk to.
He is hilarious. He cracks me up. I think he was one of our first podcasters on the network.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah. So he's been around for a while. And your podcast, the Dr. Carolyn Coker Ross Show, is on the network now too. Yay.
Yeah, I know. I'm so excited about that. I feel like I'm in such great company being on a network that focuses on mental health issues.
Yeah, I that's the thing that everybody loves is this kind of family of like-minded people. Doesn't mean that we all have the same views on everything, but we have one common theme, which is, mental health.
Yeah.
And all that entails. Now, your show, the byline is Help for Binge Eating, Food Addiction, and Emotional Eating. That's right up my alley in terms of being a patient.
Let's be clear, you were not my patient.
Exactly. Not your patient. No, but I'm going to pick your brain like I am for this show. So, I definitely want to talk about the Anchor program. We'll get into that, but I wanted to ask you, I'm not saying anything new, listeners. Of course, I'm not saying anything new to you either. I'm just my experience, and with the fact that I am surrounded by so many mental health counselors. The eating disorders, any kind of issue that you struggled with. So if you drank too much or you smoked too much pot, or, well, my friends, they tell me don't say pot anymore, it's ridiculous, or you're aging yourself, weed, marijuana, or an eating disorder, all that has been just amplified during COVID, and that we're seeing record numbers of people, especially women over 50, wanting to, get help for their eating disorder. So I wanted to, talk about that piece with you and what you're finding as well.
Yeah, there's been an increasing number of middle-aged women who may have had an eating disorder when they were younger and then relapsed in midlife, or they just developed the eating disorder in their 50s. And sometimes it has to do with transitions in their lives, like in their 50s, a lot of women may experience divorce or separation or empty nest syndrome, et cetera, et cetera. And those kind of stresses may tip them over the edge into an eating disorder. And obviously, COVID, it is just such a stressor. Mm-hmm. Not only, does it generate a lot of anxiety and fear, but people are very isolated. They don't have their usual support mechanisms, whether, sometimes it's 12-step meetings, and most of those are online now. And they're not exactly the same experience, although they can be helpful. But I think all of those factors have made it more likely that someone will relapse with their eating disorder and start having behaviors again.
Yeah, I mean, and we're home, so the refrigerator,
the food is there.
Yeah, and oh, how convenient that you can just, even out for me out in the middle of nowhere, I still can get Uber Eats to deliver.
Oh, I know. It's not just that, but I think it's just the usual skills that we use have been upended. Mm-hmm. And even for myself, my big thing that I struggle with is cookies. Mm-hmm. And you can order cookies from Amazon.
Right.
You don't even have to go to a grocery store. It's crazy. So, I just think that, discipline has always been very much overrated as a way. Discipline and willpower are very overrated as ways to deal with an eating disorder, because most of the time, the overeating, the binge eating, emotional eating, food addiction behaviors are related to trying to numb these uncomfortable feelings that we have or push them down with food. Mm-hmm. And so the feelings that are coming up during all of the social issues that are happening, the political issues, as well as COVID, that's for many women, that's their default, women and men, but that's their default way of coping, is to go back to their eating disorder.
Oh my God, I know. I've been really looking at it and just really being honest with myself about it, really working on not shaming myself, because that just makes it worse, I would think, for anybody, but it definitely makes it worse for me. So I've been saying, of course, you're upset, and you're how I would speak to a friend struggling with the same issue, which is lovely, because I'm, treating myself as a friend, which is great. But I've been able to go back and go, God, when did this start for me? When did this? And for me, it was a way to deal with my dad, who was extremely needy, extremely inappropriate sexually. He was a pedophile. And so I remember at young ages, because I was with him every other weekend, going into the kitchen constantly at his house and getting food, anything I could get my hands on.
Yeah.
And that was how I kind of coped dealing with him. So it's been good for me to, it's not like I didn't know that already, but the ability to sort of go back and look at it honestly and without fear and kind of excavate it, sort of like the psychiatrist on my shoulder kind of a way, has been really interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's really important what you're doing, and it's a way to give yourself grace,
Yeah.
that you don't get caught in that shame and guilt cycle that so many people do with eating disorders. I talk a lot about how eating disorders are seen unconsciously as a solution to different problems in our lives. And when you're a child, you don't have a lot of options
Right.
for solutions. And food is, usually present, hopefully, and often that is the way to solve your fear and your anxiety and those problems. But then it continues into adulthood, and we still unconsciously think of it as a solution to a problem when it's really more of a symptom of the problem. It's more of an indicator that there is a problem. And we know that food can't fix our emotions. Food can't heal our trauma. So it's what you're doing is super important because you're bringing to your awareness what the real problem is, not the problem of your eating behaviors.
Right.
The real problem started when you were a little girl, and I'm sure you've done a lot of work on it, but
right.
My experience with my own trauma is that in times of extreme stress, sometimes it comes up again. You're never really completely shed of it.
Okay, I want to hone in on the symptom piece, because so many people that I talk to, and I have friends that are, that they don't eat. That's their problem. They go back to anorexia or bulimia, and then there's the binge eaters out there, me. So what we talk about is, finding those symptoms, finding that point of origin and trying to work from there. But sometimes that can feel like a labyrinth.
Yeah, I don't recommend that you do that on your own. I think it's, if you've had therapy and you've already identified those issues, then what you did, which is just bringing it to awareness again. Oh yeah, I forgot this, this pandemic or this whatever is causing me to feel a lot of fear. And I can remember that the first time I felt this kind of fear and insecurity was when I was a child. And that's the level at which that's all it should take. It's like, okay, I see it again. I don't have to do anything about it. I don't have to go back there, but I just have to recognize that it's a reactivation of something that happened earlier. Now, if you haven't had the therapy and done your own work in recovery, then it's not it's not a good idea to try to go back and look at those things, because you can get, sucked into just a mire of negative feelings and depression and never find your way out of it. So it's really important to have support and help if you're looking at doing that kind of work.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm blessed in that I'm surrounded by
therapists.
Therapists, exactly. Not that I call them and go, be my therapist, but just the kind of conversations that we have are always deeper conversations, because of that. So yeah, it is scary. But we are in a scary time. We are in a time of unknownness. We are in a time with so many things, as you said, politically, socially, the virus, like we are legit in the most stressful time for many of our lives. And so there's no discounting that. There's no saying, oh, you should be handling it better, you should be blah, blah, blah. So how do you begin to work with someone that, okay, we need to acknowledge that this is a scary time. You're not stuffing your feelings because it's a habit or because it's stuff you haven't worked on through totally in the past. Like legit, this is right now, right here.
Yeah. Well, I said before that I work with people and advise them to give themselves grace. And I think this is maybe something that most people don't think about. But when I say give yourself grace, it's like saying have compassion for yourself. You know, look at yourself and recognize this is a hard time. So if you're, if you're binging and you're restricting or you're purging during this hard time, treat yourself like you would treat a friend. I think you said it best. And so it's about having some compassion for who you are and not beating yourself up because you have defaulted to these other behaviors. Having said that, then if you're aware now that you are using these behaviors as a way to respond to the stress, whatever's in the news today,
right, or a minute ago,
or 2 minutes forward, it's just, I think that's what's most stressful for me is just, I want to be informed, but the news is coming so fast and so hard that it's hard to digest. And so anyway, I think it's important to just, if you are having behaviors, just to recognize that and ask yourself, are there other ways that I could deal with this? And just gently, try other things to see if there's reaching out for support, talking with a close friend, going for a walk around the block, anything that will give you a sense of relief from the momentary, emotion that you're experiencing, the distress that you're experiencing.
Yeah, I was walking every day, and then I developed plantar fasciitis.
Yeah, that happened to me. Then you can bike.
Right.
Fasciitis. So that's another option.
And you can get on a rower. I bought a really cool rowing machine, and I'm doing that because that also doesn't put that pressure on your feet. But it's really interesting to be sidelined and be like, oh my God. Okay, well, at least the walking was making it so that the caloric intake wasn't so horrible that it outweighed the walking. But now,
but again, that's a Band-Aid, though.
It is, yes,
on the wound. And I think there are two things I'd like to say about that. One is we have to have a toolkit of multiple skills, not just one.
Go. Yeah.
And if walking is out of your toolkit, then you should be able to reach in automatically and grab another thing, whether it be biking or, going, if you have the ability to go for a swim or call a friend, there's just a long list of things that either can distract you from what you're feeling right now or soothe you with what you're feeling. Listening to music, relaxation tapes, and the list goes on. So I think the biggest problem I see with the patients I work with who have binge eating or food addiction or emotional eating is that they don't have anything in their toolkit except food.
Yes, very true. And I think with a lot of people, I've noticed this too, that are what would be called highly sensitive people or highly empathic people, more than the norm, which I definitely am. There's a lot of, with this heightened stuff, which is a reason to eat or to restrict, is to just, I can't deal with the volume of other people's stuff as well as my own. Boy, what an interesting journey it has been for me to finally get to the root of my boundary issues.
Yes. That's the word that came up as you were talking, is having those boundaries.
Yeah, I had so many people like latch on and I'm not, I allow this and not as many as used to. Now it's like one at a time. Thank goodness there used to be 50, but I am noticing the toolkit you're talking about. Okay, I'm maneuvering myself out of these things more quickly, and I'm recognizing the behaviors that are not appropriate and what they remind me of, usually my mother. it's interesting to sit and be able to navigate that, because I think because the shame and the guilt I will not allow myself to shame myself. I just won't.
Yeah. I talk to my clients a lot about connecting these dots, and the dots start usually in childhood, as you talked about, with some form of abuse, neglect, or trauma. And then people, during that trauma or abuse or neglect, they experience certain emotions and certain body sensations. And those are the keys to the triggers. So when something else happens that triggers them, it usually triggers those same emotions, like you said, fear and anxiety and insecurity, feeling like you're not safe.
Right.
Uh, and so you get those body sensations and you have those emotions, and then you want to reach for whatever your
Twinkies. Yeah.
Oh, Twinkies. Oh, we're really going old school, huh? I didn't know they still made those.
Oh, yes, they do. They're too sweet for me now, but yeah, that was a go-to food. Yeah.
Reach for the Twinkies. But one thing that is often left out of this loop is recognizing the underlying beliefs that this trauma has caused in us. It changes our identity. It changes how we see ourselves. I always say that trauma hijacks your potential in life. And the way it does is through these beliefs. So if you've been mistreated as a child, you try your best to make sense of it. And usually, because children are so, egocentric, it's all about them. They think it must be something I did, or it must be something wrong with me.
Right.
And so then these beliefs come about, or I'm not lovable, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy. And those beliefs then are what come into play when you're 50 years old, or you're 60 years old, or however old later, and you default to your eating disorder. And even if you don't get caught in the shame and guilt, I think of these beliefs as like wearing, dark colored glasses.
Yeah.
So everywhere you look, it looks a certain way.
Right.
And other people can say to you, no, it's not that way. No, you shouldn't take that personally, or you shouldn't feel that someone's, against you or whatever. But you have those dark colored glasses on and you can't see anything different.
Right. And you keep creating that pattern
Right.
again and again.
Relationships and, your job, et cetera, et cetera. Because when you have those kinds of beliefs, it shows up in every area of your life, every single area.
So true. And it's interesting to sort of be on a precipice about it, where you do see the other side, but you're not quite there yet. Like, it's a place you vacation, but at least you vacation there.
Yeah. And also there's a difference between knowing about something and really understanding it to the depth of your being. And this happened to me recently, where, my biggest obsession has always been work. I will definitely admit that I am definitely a workaholic, and, I get a lot of kudos for being a workaholic as a doctor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, that just reinforces, but it's really about that insecurity that I had as a child, that I have to always be proving myself by doing for other people and taking care of other people. And, it's at some point, actually, it was recently, it hit me how my obsession with work had really affected my children. And yes, I had realized there, God, I've been in therapy for my whole entire life.
Right.
From the first time I could pay for therapy on my own. So it's not like I didn't know this, but this hit me on a visceral level, that, how when I was preoccupied with work, I was not present for them, how my, just all down the line, how it might have made them feel and might have caused some of the issues that they have. And it gutted me. I cried for like hours. And that's the depth at which I got it. It's like, I will never forget that experience because it is now in my DNA.
Right.
And, you know what I mean? And and I think some of the stuff we say we get is all intellectual instead of the healing part where, we're all afraid to go there. It's painful. It's very painful.
Yeah, it is painful. And it's just, it's really, I don't want anyone to like turn this off hearing me say this because I don't mean to be insensitive. The kind of gift of what we're all going through in 2020 is that we are collectively having to sit with ourselves and look at our stuff, no matter if we've been in therapy for a long time, like you and I have, or we haven't. This is a time where people are really having to look at themselves.
I say this all the time on my podcast as well, because I think it's a very unique opportunity. Yes, it's horrible. Yes, we all hate it. Yes, we're tired of it. But, I talk to my patients in my private practice and also the clients with eating disorders in the Anchor program because one day you're going to look back on this and realize that you either got worse during the pandemic or you got better. Like you either became a better person or you just fell into your old habits and didn't pay attention. And, I've noticed, even because despite my workaholism, I've had to be away from the office, and it has given me more downtime. And I'm realizing, wow, my intuition really likes downtime.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had ideas, I've had, just changes, insights, all of that, because I'm not rushing around all day, every day. And it's amazing to think about that this is what it has taken to get me not to go to work.
Exactly. I know. I think about the same thing. I think about how relieved I am not to be going to every conference and getting on a plane constantly and just moving, running, go, just all these things to, keep me distracted. Food and work, holism.
Well, and that's what it does. It keeps us distracted from the things we need to pay attention to. Even the small things. Like I walked out of my door one day and I realized I had this beautiful coral rose on my driveway, and I was going to walk right past it because I was so like, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that. And I just stopped and I'm like, my goodness, how much else have I missed in my life?
Right, exactly. I know. I've thought about those things too, and I've thought about how much, like, what is it that I want to do instead of just creating to just create. What comes with reflection and not being, all the time. You're right. It's
come to me too, and I feel like I don't think I mentioned this to you, but I actually had COVID in March.
Yeah, you had said that. What was that like?
It was brutal. I was sick in bed for 2 weeks, and I live alone. So, I had to like drag myself to the kitchen and heat up the can of soup or whatever, but it was brutal. And after the 2 weeks, I started feeling better, and I thought, oh, great, I'm good. And now I can get back to work.
Right. Did you know what it was?
Yes, I knew.
Okay.
I did know. It was before the testing though. And so by the time the testing came out, I had been sick for several weeks, and so it was difficult to get it confirmed, but I had every symptom there was, and I was sicker than I've ever been in my entire life. Like I probably should have gone to the hospital, but I'm a doctor. I don't want to go to hospitals. So, but anyway, after that, then I was, anxious to get back to work and so on and so forth. And then I developed the long haul symptoms, just ungodly exhaustion and shortness of breath and so on and so forth. I'm getting better over time, but it was a real wake up call to what you're talking about, which is, okay, I don't know how much longer I can go at this pace
Right.
and this pace is nothing compared to the pace when I was 30,
Yeah.
it's nothing. But if I can't go at this pace, like what would a life for me, like what would a satisfying life for me look like? How can I feel like I have meaning in my life and have joy in my life if I'm not like doing all the stuff that I've been doing? And it's been really quite a reflection point. And I think COVID has given us this opportunity to do just that.
I like that reflection point. I've sat with that too and thought, I actually allowed myself to feel like, okay, well, this network's been created and I feel really like allowed myself to feel good about it. Just like, this is something to feel good about. This is a big contribution to the well-being of and the validation and all those things of so many people. I allowed myself to stop needing to give my resume, needing to prove to whoever was there, could be someone I don't even know, that I'm a person of value because look at what I've done.
Exactly.
I stopped doing that. And I was like, well, then, yeah, the same thing. Like, well, okay, now you're going to practice not saying anything about what you do or this network. You're just going to go to a room with people, before COVID, and you're going to just be you and not talk about this other thing. And so I was starting on that journey. And then with this, you're not getting the accolades and the invited to get this award or go speak here or whatever, all that heady stuff that can happen, as you know, and then go, okay, well, how okay am I with just me? And can that be the next thing to really look at and excavate? Because I feel secure in what I did. So I don't have to prove myself in that way. Now I can do it in a different way that maybe is more healthy.
Yeah. And that's really a very deep reflection. And it's a place that most people never get to in their lives. So, good on you. I had a similar experience. I did a TEDx talk in January before the pandemic started. And the TEDx talk was on historical and intergenerational trauma.
It was so good. I just have to tell you that I fangirled over it when I watched it. And I already had, met you at least virtually and knew you were a part of the network. But then I watched it and I was like, oh my God. So anyway, just fangirl moment.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I don't get many fangirl moments, but it was a life-changing experience to do that TED Talk because it brought back to me so much of my, life that I had kind of discounted and discarded and, I don't need to focus on that, or I don't need to look at that. And it almost caused a little mini breakdown for me. After I did the TED Talk, I had to take like a week, of just sleeping and so on, because it just hit me to my core that I had left important parts of myself behind.
Wow.
Important parts of my cultural identity, important understandings of my own trauma, both historical and, intergenerational and personal or individual trauma. I had just said, well, I don't need to deal with that. Like, I know about that stuff. That's no big deal.
Right.
And it was a big deal. When I actually looked at it, I realized, OMG, this is what happened to me in my life. And I just, being the trooper I am, I just marched right through it and kept working and kept, You know what I mean?
Yeah, oh my God, yes, absolutely. I know why I have a donkey, because they just put their head down and you can just throw as many sacks of whatever on them and they'll just keep on going. And I'm like,
That's me.
damn, that's me too.
And when you start unpacking those sacks, you realize, I mean, not only sad and traumatic things you left behind, but also, good and beautiful things you've left behind. And it just it's really hard to explain, because I did my TED Talk in Texas. So my sister, who's one of my best friends, she couldn't understand. I was trying to explain to her why I was feeling so like unnerved. I was so anxious. I couldn't sleep. And I kept trying to explain it to her, and it was hard for her to get it. And then like about a month or two later, she had some stuff happen in her life, and she came back to me and said, now, now I understand. I thought I had this handled, but
Yeah. And isn't it interesting to look back too, when we're talking about intergenerational trauma, you can look back. I can look back at like pictures of the women in my biological family and see them wearing the trauma that I myself carry around and have carried around with me. Now, some of it, of course, I, got rid of that pack, but there's still stuff, left to do. But just seeing photos. Yeah. And to look at those and go, oh my God, wow, do I see? And I used to look at those pictures and go, oh my God, we all have these wide hips, and we were definitely, what did my stepdad used to say in a joking way? He never meant it as disrespectful, because he said it about himself too. We were not the slim ankled aristocrats. We were the potato pickers in the village out there, pumping out a baby, sling it over your back and keep picking potatoes. I mean, that was my family lineage. So I see this in these women, but to be able to look at them when I'm not, where I necessarily want to be in terms of my physical health and everything, but to look at them and not be like afraid to really look and feel love and feel like, yeah, we have carried a lot of shit.
For
decades.
Exactly. And, a lot of my growing up years, I was at odds with my mother. Yeah. And, as I got older and more smart, I just say more wise, hopefully, I started looking at her in a completely different way, just recognizing what she had to go through as an African-American woman who was extremely bright, but, was not able to accomplish all the things she wanted to accomplish, was marginalized in many ways and so on, and lived in the South her whole life. I mean, when I started thinking about those things, I thought, wow, she is friggin' amazing.
Yeah.
And I can understand why she was angry a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, wow, what a lot to unpack. How has it been for you with the social unrest around things like systemic racism? Not that they haven't always been there, just that the bringing it to the foreground that we have had this year specifically, and of course since, in the last 4 years.
Yeah. Well, I think, it's part of a journey for me, because several years ago, two Black women who are eating disorder specialists invited me to speak with them on eating disorders in African-American women. That's Dr. Charlene Small from University of Richmond, and Dr. Mazzella Fuller from Duke. And when they invited me to speak, of course I was honored and, really loved it. And that started a journey where I started really, getting into this issue of racism and how it affects particularly Black women. And then doing the TEDx talk, as I already told you, was like my little breakdown in the world. So I was much more my awareness was much more heightened. But I have to tell you, I don't think many non-Black or non-people of color, many whites, I'll just say white folks, realize the actual, emotional impact of seeing a Black man being killed on national TV or on
Absolutely.
YouTube. And, there were days, because I have sons, I have 3 sons, 2 of whom had negative, dangerous interactions with the police. And there were times during the beginning of that where I would just wake up crying.
Right.
Just feeling, because I felt for those mothers. And the one that finally hit me the hardest was I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, but he was a kid in Aurora, Colorado, where I used to live in Denver. Aurora is just, on the outskirts of Denver. And this kid was a massage therapist. He was small, he didn't look threatening in any way. He offered to go get us a drink for his little brother. And he was killed on his way back to his house. And I looked at his picture and I just thought, if a kid who looks that harmless and innocuous could lose his life on an errand, which was so kind, to get something for his little brother, then what are we all about, America?
Right.
And it was just so heartbreaking for me to contemplate, that anybody else in the future, other than somebody who's a criminal, who and
Who
even
is
then,
an actual criminal, and even
who is
then,
an actual criminal,
Right.
who's not somebody who is suspected of having or who's in a drive-through, fell asleep drunk in a drive-through. Those aren't criminals. Those are
Right.
people who've made bad choices, or
Right.
they were mentally ill people, or et cetera, et cetera. It just is, it's just frightening. And I just feel so much for those mothers, because I know what it's like to lose a son, and it crushed me. And I think if everyone could think of it as that could be my child,
Right.
instead of thinking, oh, they must have done something wrong. Oh, well, if they hadn't been asleep in that, you know what? People make stupid choices all the time.
Absolutely. It is not race. There is not one race over the other that makes more stupid choices.
And they don't deserve to die for their stupid choices. And so I just think, if it were possible for all of our listeners, all of us who are talking about this topic, to just think, how would I feel if that was my son?
Right.
Then I think a lot would change. But it's empathy is on short supply right now in the US of A, I think.
It is, but I'll tell you, and you can tell me whether we keep this in the show or not, because I definitely don't want anyone to be uncomfortable. But I must say that I'll try to do it without crying. That we have a woman of color as in the highest, the highest office, and what that says to women and women of color. What they are allowed to do, what they can achieve.
Yeah, it's big. It's really big. And
huge.
I'm really excited about that. And I'm also, my excitement is tempered by the number of people who, continue to vote against that kind of thing. So it's, we in our country, we have a long tradition of agreeing on some things and disagreeing on other things, but not being mad at each other all about it.
Right.
I haven't always liked the president of the I'm not talking about President Trump, but I'm saying previous presidents
Right.
didn't always fit my viewpoint. But I always felt that in the long run, the majority rule and democracy will protect us. And that I think that's what a lot of people are struggling with now. But I agree with
Absolutely.
you. I'm so happy that President-elect Joe Biden chose Kamala.
Mm.
She is such a smart, intelligent person and such a great representation of two cultures,
Yes.
She's a twofer,
Yeah.
better than that. And I think she's going to fight hard for women of all colors. I really do.
Absolutely. Just who she is alone says so much without her even having to open her mouth, which of course she does. I'm speaking. I love that. There's so many memes, but that's a whole other show. I want to close with talking about the program that you have, because what strikes me in all of this, even with what we just talked about, which I thought, I made us really pivot somewhere, but it actually fits perfectly, because again, this is what's going on. Like, if there was ever a reason for everybody to be struggling and their coping mechanisms tested, and it's with everything that's gone on this year and is still going on. So that toolkit piece is something to hang on to. So can you talk about your program and how that helps give you those tools?
Yeah, first, so it's called the Anchor Program. And first of all, I would just say my overarching philosophy is helping women who have spent decades of their lives being preoccupied with their weight and how they, their eating behaviors and so on, to be free to be themselves. That is my overarching goal for the Anchor Program. Because I talk to women who spend 90% of their psychic energy and time on worrying about their body, worrying about being judged, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And in my mind, I think, what would it be like if those women spent 90% of their time on something they truly loved and believed in? Like, wow, that could be women are
powerful.
Yeah.
So true. And it's so true. It's like what I say about, look, I think about it like, of course it's important to take care of your body, be physical with some kind of exercise, meditate, eat right, all those things. Yes, absolutely. No doubt about it. And something that helps you be free of that stuff you're talking about wherever you're at. And even if you are not on any kind of a program, blah, blah, just that you have that lack of rent being paid all the time psychically, as you said, to those thoughts. Like, it isn't about, this is a fitness program. It's about, being free of all that stuff.
Yeah. So that's why I wanted to mention it, because we're on the Anchor Program is a non-diet program. It's all online. And I started doing an online program in 2016 when I had quit my last job working in a treatment center. And the reason is I quit is because I saw how much money parents were spending to try to save their children, to help them go into recovery. And sometimes treatment programs are needed, but you and I both know that 30 days is not enough to heal from trauma or heal from an eating disorder. And I just thought to myself, as I was driving back and forth to the treatment program, feeling more and more dissatisfied, there's got to be another way. And so 2016, I put all of my content online. And so I have an online curriculum, and then we meet once a week in the program on Zoom and do this work. And it's been the most fulfilling thing that I've ever done. And like you, during the pandemic, when things were not working, I wasn't having enough people enrolling, I thought to myself, well, maybe this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
But I couldn't let it go. And so even though I lost so much money in the beginning of the program, trying to figure out how to go from, seeing people, having a program in person to having an online program. And that's not my area. And I obviously hired all the wrong people. But anyway,
been there, done that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad to hear I'm not the only one
Nope.
who lost so much money. Because I could really retire to, some tropical island right now with the money I spent. But
same here.
Despite the fact that I made no money, I just kept feeling called to do it. And so I kept the program going and, kept tweaking it and improving my methods, what I said about my work and so on. And so what I see, and one of the things that your listeners might be interested in, is I interviewed 3 graduates from the program. One graduated over a year ago, and the other one, I think, graduated like 6 or 8 months ago. Other 2 graduated 6 to 8 months ago. I wanted to find out, with reflection, looking back, how the program helped them and where they were on their journey. And it really reinforced for me that I'm doing
the right thing.
I'm doing the right thing. So whether I make money or don't make money, I can't pull myself away from it. Not yet, anyway.
I know, that's how I look at what I'm doing. Like, I'm supposed to be doing this. And if I got to eat Wheaties while I do it, then, and luckily I was to the point of, I'm not having to eat Wheaties, and then COVID.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, okay, you're eating Wheaties and ramen again. Got it. But that's okay.
Yeah, mine is Cheerios because it's gluten-free, which I can't eat anymore. So it's like, Cheerios, really? Come on. That's like child food. That's not adult food.
I hear from so many people that, can see things into the future and stuff, or have that intuitive gift of that. And they all say the same thing about people that do what we're doing. Enjoy the rest, enjoy the resting a bit more than or a lot more than you're used to, until spring of 2021, because then, holy moly, the floodgates are going to come in and we'll be ready. I just keep hearing that over and over. And I'm like, okay.
That's really good to hear. That gives me some hope.
You're doing exactly what you're supposed to do. Yeah.
I can get through 4 years on Cheerios. I think I can make it another 4 months.
Well, I want to make sure, listeners, that that you can get the binge eating and compulsive overeating workbook, the emotional eating workbook, and the food addiction recovery workbook, which are all books by Dr. Carolyn Coker Ross. So tell them where they can find out about your program and more about you.
Yeah, the Anchor program website is just Anchor, ANCHOR program.com. And then you can find out a lot of information about binge eating disorder and the books and about me, et cetera, et cetera. You can even see my TEDx talk if you go to my other website, CarolynRossMD.com. And it's CarolynRossMD.com.
Yeah. And please, oh my gosh, listen to her amazing show that is now on the network, the Dr. Carolyn Coker Ross show. And, I have to go find those shows now with your past.
The alumni?
Yeah, the alumni, because I definitely want to hear what they have to say. It was so
interesting because each of them had a different path. I mean, I was just really riveted by what they had taken from the program for themselves and how they had molded it to their lives. It was cool.
Yeah, it is. It's very cool that's how I feel when, someone that's never done a podcast before and they think, oh, I can't do it. I have nothing important to say. Who would want to listen? And then they'll, like,
done that.
Yeah. And I'm like, 2 months after they start doing it, not always, but the ones that do go, oh my God, this is so amazing. I'm so happy. This is exciting. I love this.
Yeah.
I want to do this. And I'm like, oh, good. Because you're helping a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Carolyn, I'm so glad that and honored that you're here. And I'm really excited for our listeners to hear your show.
And I just want to thank you, Kristin, because most people don't get this deep with me, when I get interviewed. And so it's been a pleasure to talk to someone on this level and to be interviewed by someone so skilled to dig all this out of me.
This is why I love what I do, because I can teach you that.
You're good at it, girl. You're good at it.
I love it. I'm going to be on an emotional, lovely, yummy high probably until tomorrow, just from this hour with you. Well, listeners, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to go look up her show. You can find it on mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com, but you can also go to your favorite podcast apps and just look up the Dr. Carolyn Coker Ross show on Mental Health News Radio Network. Hi, listeners. I'll make it quick. These are some really cool places that give discounts and other cool things for listeners of Mental Health News Radio Network. If you want to get amazing help with healing from narcissistic abuse, go to healfromanarcissist.com. If you want CBD products that are the best of the best, I use them myself, go to proze.com and use the code mentalhealth20, mentalhealth20. If you want to get daily perk ups that help retrain your brain to think more positively, go to perkupdaily.com. And also, just because this one's fun, snarkycandles.com. I guarantee you'll love them. Snarky with a Y, SNARKY candles.com. And don't forget, if you want to hear all the shows on the network about first responders, you can go to firstrespondermentalhealthnetwork.com, and all of our shows that focus on narcissistic abuse, narcissistabusehealingnetwork.com. Thanks for listening, and back to the show.
But will you ride the low, low, lows with me? Will you ride the low, low, lows with me?
One thing you can always count on at Mental Health News Radio Network and my show is that there will always be dogs around. Why? They are natural healers, excellent for your mental health. The original therapy dog Miles has something to say in just a moment. For now, please check out all of our amazing shows at mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com and all your favorite podcast apps. Until next time, I'm Kristin Walker, and thank you for listening.
And I can ride the low, low, lows with me. I can ride the low, low, lows with me. Till my vision clears up perfectly. I can ride the low, low, lows with me.
Good boy.